Please stand by. We're about to begin. Good day and welcome to the Getting Started with Your CED Grant conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Whitney Marsland. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Whitney Marsland from ICF and am joined here today by Sharon Williams, a program specialist from the Office of Community Services. Today's webinar, Getting Started with Your CED Grant, is the first in a series of 4 webinars that will be held over the next several weeks for new CED and CED-HFFI grantees. This webinar will be useful information on getting started with your grants, and we encourage you to attend all the webinar sessions in the series because they touch on all different topics which are helpful to you to have a successful project. This webinar and all the other webinars in the series will be recorded and will provide the recording, a transcript, and the PowerPoint slides to you, and it'll be posted on the CED website, and we'll provide some instructions on how to access those materials following the presentation. So if you're not able to attend one of the sessions, it will be available to you after. So now I will turn it over to Sharon to get us started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Sharon Williams from the Office of Community Service. Congratulations on receiving a CED or CED-HFFI grant, and welcome to the first webinar designed to provide you with guidance, resource, and tools as you kick off your grant. I'm joined here today by my fellow program specialists, one of whom you'll be working with throughout the life of your grant, and they are Caroline Giles, Karen Harris, Andrew Colley, Michelle Loaf, Gerald Shanklin, and Harold Teller. We look forward to working with you over the next few years to create a sustainable employment and business opportunities for low-income people and to improve the quality of life in your community. In today's webinar, we will cover the following topics. The first topic, program objectives. Second, ACF Offices and Roles. Third, accessing grant funds. Fourth, federal requirements. Fifth, program requirements and other helpful resources. Now I will turn it back to Whitney from ICF to get started. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sharon. So the Community Economic Development Program, which we will refer to as CED, provides technical and financial assistance for community economic development activities that address the economic needs of low-income people and families through the creation of employment and business opportunities in low-income communities. Jobs are a key component of economic self-sufficiency. This program is vital to helping low-income individuals become more self-sufficient because it helps revitalize communities and provide job opportunities. This is even more true in light of the current economic climate where private enterprises are slower to invest. So the investments provided by CED can spur opportunity in these neighborhoods. Grantees that received a CED Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant, which we call HFFI, are referred to as CED-HFFI grantees. And just like the CED program, HFFI projects are expected to further the Department of Health and Human Services goals of strengthening families and promoting self-sufficiency through the creation of employment and business opportunities in low-income communities. And in addition, HFFI grantees are expected to improve access to healthy, affordable foods. CED-HFFI grantees may be asked to participate in additional federal evaluations to assess impact and progress of these grants in communities that lack healthy and affordable food options. And throughout this webinar series, we often refer to the CED program and CED grantees, and that includes the HFFI grantees. The ongoing funding of this program by Congress depends in part on the performance of existing awards. So everyone's attention to program requirements is important in demonstrating results and achieving program success. and more importantly, the impact of this program for low-income individuals and distressed communities is dependent on the successful implementation of your project. So the goal of today's webinar is to help you get your projects off to a good start and really understand the responsibilities and expectations of your grant. So in the next several slides, we'll introduce the key HHS offices that administer the CED program and that you will be working with throughout the course of your grant. So overall, the Administration for Children and Families within HHS is responsible for federal programs that promote the economic and social well-being of families, children, individuals, and communities. Some other programs operated by ACF include Community Services Block Grants, LIHEAP, which is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, Head Start, and many others. So for more information on the different programs that ACF administers, you can go to the ACF website. There are 3 primary offices at ACF that will be important to you as you kick off and implement your grant. First is the Office of Community Services, which we refer to as OCS, which is located within ACF and is the office with primary responsibility for implementing the CED program. And within OCS, the CED program resides within the Division of Community Discretionary Programs, which we call DCDP. For the purposes of this presentation, we refer to OCS and DCDP interchangeably, and you have been assigned an OCS program specialist who will serve as kind of your day-to-day contact for any issues that may arise or any questions that you have regarding your grant. OCS is also supported by the Office of Grants Management, OGM, and the Payment Management System, PMS, both of which help with financial matters regarding your grant. So OGM is also located within ACF, and it oversees the business aspects and financial areas of grant award administration. And you've also been assigned an OGM Grants Management Specialist who will serve as your contact for business and financial matters. And later in this series in January, we'll be having a webinar specifically focusing on OGM and the policies, procedures, and requirements for CED grants. The Payment Management Service, known as PMS, provides automated grant payment and cash management services for several federal agencies, including many outside of HHS. And our team at ICF also supports DCDP by providing technical assistance to CED grantees. And we'll explain more about how you'll interact with each of these offices throughout today's webinar. So first is working with OCS. The mission of the Office of Community Services is to work in partnerships with communities, states, and other government agencies and nonprofits to provide a range of human and economic development services and activities to help ameliorate the causes and symptoms of poverty. So OCS programs aim to increase the capacity of individuals and families to become self-sufficient, to improve and revitalize communities, and to build stability and capacity so that people are able to create their own opportunities. OCS is responsible for most aspects of CED grant administration, so issuing the funding opportunity announcements, reviewing the grant proposals, awarding grants, and providing the day-to-day guidance and interpretation of program rules, and just generally assisting grantees in helping administer their grants and maximizing their performance. So like I mentioned earlier, throughout the life of your CED grant, you will work with an assigned program specialist at OCS on the programmatic aspects related to your grant, and this is the person that you will most often talk to about your project. Your program specialist was identified in a letter from the Director of the Office of Community Services, and you will work with your assigned program specialist on things like obtaining guidance on your program design issues, if you need to request some technical assistance, and different reporting achievements, So they're kind of your go-to person for any question you have regarding your grant. So this slide provides the contact information for each of the program specialists. Each grant is assigned a program specialist, and this is, like I said, the person that you will work most closely with. For some of you, you have multiple CED grants, and OCS has tried to assign the same program specialist for all of your grants. So this means that you will likely not have to work with multiple program specialists if you have multiple grants. However, you might be working with a program specialist that is different than someone that you've worked with in the past. All of the CED-HFFI grants are handled by Karen Harris, Andrew Colley, and Michelle Lopes. And if you have multiple grants and one or more is a CED-HFFI project, then all of your grants will be handled by the same program specialist. So the program specialist assignments and their contact information is available on the grantee contact page of the CED page of the OCS website. So you can look there to see who your assigned program specialist is, or you can email us at ocsregistrar@icfi.com, and we can provide you with your program specialist and their contact information. So next we'll talk about working with OGM. The Office of Grants Management administers the business aspects of the grant award, so things like grant administration, business, financial, and other kind of non-program areas of the grant award. OGM works in collaboration with the CED program by making sure grantees are compliant with the applicable laws, regulations, policies, and procedures. And they coordinate a lot with OCS in this effort. OGM activities include issuing the grant awards. They receive reports such as the federal financial report. OGM processes changes in key personnel at your organizations. They ensure that grantees are compliant with all applicable laws of the program. And they work with OCS on many issues throughout your grant. So remember that generally grantees should contact their program specialist within OCS for questions if they're of a programmatic nature. However, OCS and OGM work very closely together. So your program specialist may frequently refer you to your grants management specialist and vice versa. So we do strongly encourage that copies of all correspondence related to your grant are sent through Grant Solutions, and we'll talk about that more throughout this webinar series, how to send correspondence through Grant Solutions, and it's helpful because this way both OGM and OCS have access to this information and different documentation. So just like your program specialist, throughout the life of your grant, you'll work with an assigned grants management specialist. They were also identified in your award package that we'll go over in a bit, and they will oversee the financial areas of your grant award and administration. So you will work with your grants management specialist to submit requests for any post-award changes, including a no-cost extension. You'll work with them to update key personnel or other details that change from your notice of award. You'll submit official copies of your financial reports to your grants management specialist, and if you're requesting guidance on any federal regulations and allowable cost items, you can work with your OGM grants management specialist on that. So the contact information for OGM is the slide you see on your screen here. If you are not sure who your OGM grants management specialist is, contact us at ocsregistrar@icfi.com, and we can send you their contact information. Next, we'll talk about the payment management services, which we refer to as PMS. They work in partnership with both OCS and OGM to support CED grantees with issues relating to receiving federal grant funds. So PMS is responsible for overseeing the grant fund disbursement process through the operation of the payment management system. So PMS is responsible for providing tools to manage grant payment requests and any disbursement of reporting activities. They will arrange direct deposit and setting up any electronic transfer and monitoring the drawdown of federal funds. They will also assist you with any audit assistance or debt management that you may need assistance with. PMS will also work with you over the life of your grant and help you with any matters that come up over the disbursement of the funds. You'll also contact them to establish the electronic funds transfer process to access your grant funds, to return any unused federal funds at the end of your grant period, and you will file your quarterly federal cash transaction reports with them. We will discuss working with PMS to access your funds in more detail later in this presentation. And this slide has the contact information for payment management, so you can contact them by email or at the phone number at their help desk that you see on this screen, and they can help you with all the matters that we just discussed. And now we will go over some information about receiving your award package, accessing your grant funds, and federal reporting requirements. So first, we'll talk about the award package. The award package congratulated you on your award and contains a lot of important documents related to your grant. So the award package is commonly referred to as the Notice of Grant Award, or NGA. However, on the grant award form, it's referred to as the NOA. So just keep in mind that there's a variety of acronyms, but they're all talking about the award package. And you should have all received your award package through Grant Solutions. So Grant Solutions is a grants management tool that will be used by you, your OCS program specialist, and your OGM grants management specialist throughout the course of your grant. It allows for the electronic sharing of information by allowing grantees to collaborate with different program offices and grant offices at the same time. So it allows program offices and grant offices to collaborate with one another about the grants they administer. Grantees can also initiate post-award actions in Grant Solutions, things like if your project director or any key staff change, or if you need to make a budget revision, or if the scope of your project or any other type of amendment request, you can facilitate that through Grant Solutions. Detailed guidance on how and when to use Grant Solutions will be provided in an upcoming webinar that's going to take place in this series, and we'll kind of get into the weeds a little bit more about Grant Solutions in that presentation. But today we'll just focus on using Grant Solutions to access the award package. So to access the award package in Grant Solutions, first you will need to log into Grant Solutions. The authorizing official and project contact that is listed in your application should have received 2 emails with login information to Grant Solutions. So the first would have contained your Grant Solutions username, and the second would have provided you with a temporary password so you could log in. If you didn't receive, if no one at your organization received a Grant Solution login, or if you've forgotten your password or username, you can contact the Grant Solution support at the email address and phone listed on this slide. And if you need additional assistance, you can always email us at the OCS registrar to get this information. And like I said, we'll talk more about how to use Grant Solution, how to log in, how to get your login information in the upcoming webinar that will take place in December. So once you have located your login information and have been able to successfully log into Grant Solution, you'll be able to access your award package by selecting the View NGA icon in the Actions column of Grant Solutions. So there's a lot of different icons in Grant Solutions to be able to do different things, and you can identify which icon is which by just hovering over the icon with your mouse. So when you're implementing your CED projects, you'll refer to the information you received in your award package and the attached documents pretty frequently they include really important information and different requirements that are related to your grant. In the next few slides, we'll go into detail about each of the documents included in your award package. And just keep in mind that not every grantee receives all of the items that we'll go over. It really depends on the type of project. So only items that are pertinent to your grant are included in your award package. In addition to the award package in Grant Solutions, you should have also received a congratulatory letter with your program specialist assignment from Rafael Elizalde, who is the OCS program manager. So by now your OCS program specialist should have reached out to you to introduce themselves and ensure you have all the information you need to get started. So at this time, if you do have any questions, you can reach out to your program specialist, and if you have any questions of more of a fiscal nature, you can reach out to your OGM or PMS. So the NGAs, or the award package, provides a lot of fundamental information about your grant, including things like the grant number, the award amount, and your project and grant period. So you may need to refer to some of this information like the grant number when completing reports and requesting payment. So you want to make sure that you read the entire NGA, and it also provides some information about some standard grant terms and conditions. When you're reading through the award package, you'll want to pay special attention to the remarks section, which is number 26 in the NGA, because it provides important information about restrictions of your federal funds pending the submission of specific documents. So we'll discuss this in a few slides, but for example, if you have a loan project, you are required to submit the Disposition of Asset Plan of Loan form, and this is listed in the remarks section of the award package. In addition, your grants management specialist will be reaching out to you if your funds are on hold pending required documentation. So if you see remarks in your NGA that your funds are restricted, but you're not sure why and you're not sure what to submit, you can contact your grants management specialist and they can help you. So the first part of the award package that we'll go over is the SF 428 and 429 notification. So this document includes information on reporting requirements for tangible personal property and real property status, and provides important information on submitting these two forms. The SF 428 form is a standard form used to collect information related to tangible personal property, and the SF 429 is used for reporting real property. So these are forms that only need to be filled out at the end of your 3 or 5 year budget period, and only if your grant meets one of the following circumstances. So the first is if your project used CED grant funds to purchase equipment with a unit cost of $5,000 or more, and residual unused supplies with an aggregate fair market value exceeding $5,000, then you have to fill out and submit the SF 428 form. Or if your project used CED grant funds to acquire or renovate real property, and you established federal interest in that property, you will need to fill out an SF 429 form. So if these forms are applicable to your grant, then at the end of your grant period, the completed forms should be submitted to OGM through Grant Solutions. And detailed instructions on how to submit documents through Grant Solutions will be provided in that Grant Solutions webinar that will take place in December. And to access this form, you can do that through the URL that's listed on this slide. And if you're unsure about whether or not you are required to submit either of these forms, you can contact your OGM management specialist, and they will be able to tell you whether your grant requires this or not. So next is the single audit pamphlet in your award package. This pamphlet contains resources with some basic information about single audits, including who should fill them out and where they can get help filling them out. A single audit combines annual financial statement audits with additional audit coverage of federal funds. So all non-federal entities that expend $750,000 or more of federal awards in a year are required to obtain an annual audit. This audit does not need to be submitted to OCS or OGM. Entities expending less than $750,000 in a year are exempt from federal audit requirements, but must make records available for review or audit by federal agencies or pass-through entities, which are non-federal entities for whom they receive federal funds if they are requested of you. And if you have any questions about the single audits or any requirements that you need to submit, you can contact PMS if they're related to auditing. So the next form is if you are using CED or HFFI grant funds to make a loan. If you are, one of the documents in your award package was a disposition of asset plan of loan agreement. This document is an agreement stating that the grantee will disclose the following information at when the loan is executed. So you need to include the interest rate, the length and term of the loans, and the payment schedule. So this document with this information needs to be signed by the authorizing official at your organization. For grantees making loans, grants will remain restricted until a completed disposition of assets plan of loan agreement is submitted to OGM. If your funds are restricted, an explanation can be found in the remarks section that we talked about a few slides ago. If this agreement is applicable to your grant, it should be submitted through Grant Solutions. If your project is a loan project, but you did not receive this document, or you're just not sure if you should fill it out, you'll want to contact your grants management specialist right away. So next is the disposition of asset plan of stocks form. So if you are using CED or CED grant funds to purchase stock or make an equity investment, then one of the documents in your award package was a disposition of asset plan of stocks agreement form. This is an agreement stating that you will disclose information at the conclusion of your grant, including the stock cost per share, the current value, and the number of shares held, and the percentage of ownership held regarding your stock or equity investment. And just like the form that you fill out if your project includes a loan, this form will need to be signed by your authorizing official, and your funds will be restricted until this is submitted to OGM. And this also will need to be submitted through Grant Solutions. So if your project does involve an equity investment and you didn't receive this form in your award package, you will want to contact OGM right away to see if it needs to be submitted. So just remember that if you're using CED funds to make a loan and an equity investment, so if you're doing both, then you do need to fill out both forms. And you'll submit those through Grant Solutions, which we will provide further guidance on in later webinars. So you should have also received information on the different reporting requirements that are expected of you now that you are receiving federal funds. So throughout the course of your grant, you will be required to submit the Federal Financial Report, which we refer to as SF425 form to OGM and to PMS. And you'll also be required to submit the Performance Progress Report, which we call the PPR. So the financial report is a report that summarizes some basic information with regard to your grant transactions and any program income you may have generated. And the PPR collects key data on your project outcomes related to businesses and jobs created. The SF425 and the PPR are both due twice a year, and a final report for each are due 90 days after the end of your grant. So your first reports for each are due April 30th, and they'll cover the period between September 30th when you first received your grant and through the 6-month period till March 31st. And then your second report will be due October 30th, and that will cover the period between April 1st and September 29th. So you should remember that you need to submit reports for each of these every October and April. So they are due at the same time, but these reports are submitted a little bit differently. The SF-425 form is submitted through Grant Solutions, and the PBR is submitted through an online system that we call OLDC. And you will receive a lot of step-by-step guidance and a lot of resources on how to submit through these two systems in later webinars, and as you kind of start working your grant, we will provide a lot of guidance on those. So to access the SF-425 form, you'll want to visit the URL listed on this slide, and you'll log into your PMS account to file your quarterly SF-425, which captures your drawdowns on your grant award. And we will talk more about these reporting requirements, the PPR and OLDC in the next webinar, which will take place November 19th. So finally, your award package will contain a document explaining that the grant award will be paid through the payment management system. If your organization is a brand new HHS grantee, you'll be sent an email from PMS instructing you on how to create your account. But if your organization has had other grants with HHS before, you will not be contacted by PMS. You can use the account information that you have for previous grants. So over the next several slides, we'll briefly explain how you'll request and receive your funds electronically. So all grant funds must be treated in accordance with federal rules and regulations, including the HHS grants policy statement, uniform administrative requirements, and the Code of Federal Regulations, and also cost principles. So these are going to be described in detail in the federal requirements section of this presentation that we will discuss in a few minutes. Federal funds carry with them several requirements, and we know that a lot of these can be pretty complicated. So while you're dealing with this process, always remember that you can reach out to your OCS program specialist and grants management specialist, and they will provide you with help and guidance along the way. So as we discussed earlier, CED award funds are paid through HHS's payment management services. So the PMS provides automated grant payment and cash management services for the entire federal government. PMS operates the centralized payment managed system, PMS, and acts as kind of a liaison between grantees and OGM to resolve any discrepancies. If this is your first award paid through PMS, by now you should have received an introductory letter from PMS requesting you fill out the direct deposit sign-up form and payment management systems access form, which is also referred to as the recipient contact form. So these are mandatory forms to receive payment. And as a new recipient, so if you're a grantee who has never received an award paid through PMS, it's also recommended that you review their website and really familiar yourself with it. The new recipient section provides some basic information and addresses both funding and reporting requirements that are necessary for receiving your awarded funds. So visit the website, become familiar with the resources, and after you do that, if you do have any additional questions or you have questions along the way, contact the PMS support team by email or phone at their help desk, which the contact information is up on your screen now. So to avoid having your direct deposit sign-up form rejected by PMS, you'll want to make sure that you include the key information that it asks for. So things like the organization name, your authorizing official, and your financial institution. You want to make sure that that information matches what's on your NGA. You'll also want to make sure that the forms that you complete don't include strikeouts or whiteout marks, and be sure that the signatures are original and in ink. And remember that you also must submit a payment management access form along with the direct deposit form, and you can access these forms on the PMS website. So once you complete these forms, they will both be submitted through PMS, and you can do that through the contact information that was on the previous slide. And after the forms are submitted and they are verified by PMS, they will send you a PMS welcome package, which will contain a username and password and instructions on using the payment management system. PMS uses two systems to manage payment requests, CashLine and SmartLink 2. CashLine allows grantees to request payment by calling an automated phone line, and SmartLink is a web-based system, so you can choose to either use both or one system that you prefer. But regardless of the method that you use to initiate a payment request, funds are electronically deposited into a designated bank account the next business day. So now we'll go over the program requirements of your grant, and there are several that go along with accepting federal grant funds. So like we mentioned, all grant funds must be treated in accordance with federal rules and regulations, including the HHS grants policy statement, the uniform administrative requirements, and cost principles. In addition, projects must also meet some programmatic requirements, including meeting project milestones, using project partner agreements, and adhering to any applicable rules and regulations. And we will describe each of these in more detail, starting with project milestones. So depending on the type of project you have, your project period is either 3 years or 5 years. So all non-construction CED projects have a 3-year grant period, and CED projects involving construction have a project period of 5 years. If your project period is 3 years, this means that you have to spend your grant funds within 3 years of the opening of your grant award. And if your project period is 5 years, this means you have to spend your grant funds within 5 years of the opening of your grant award. The project period for your grant was specified in your notice of award. You'll remember that your application included an implementation plan that would ensure you spend your funds within the required time frame and that all positions created remain in place for at least 1 year beyond your grant period. So this plan should have also included some realistic milestones with regard to business creation or expansion, job creation, and spending any leverage funds that you report on through the life of your grant. But we understand that as you put those plans in action, you might face some challenges and hit some roadblocks that keep you from meeting every milestone that you laid out in your application. And that's okay, but you should be prepared to address these challenges and kind of overcome them in order to spend your funds within the required time frame. So the most successful projects don't just rely on the plan that they submitted with their application, but kind of evaluate and change their projects as they go to be able to meet these milestones. And you will be able to work very closely with your OCS program specialist and your OGM grants management specialist as you kind of hit these roadblocks and keep them informed about any changes to your project that you might make. So you'll want to be sure to notify both your OCS program specialist and your grants management specialist as things come up. So now we'll talk a little bit about project partner agreements, and we'll discuss project partner agreements more in the future, so we'll just kind of talk about the basics now. But throughout the course of your grant, you will work with project partners to successfully implement your projects. So a project partner is defined as an individual, organization, or business participating in the project that's not the direct recipient of CED grant funds. So this could be like an investor or a more experienced CDC that you're working with. And for any project partner you work with, you are required to use a written and signed agreement to document the relationship with your project partner. It's important to provide copies of these agreements to both your OCS program specialist and your OGM grants management specialist through Grant Solutions. So accessing your grant funds could be more difficult if you don't have these agreements in place or you haven't submitted them to OGM and OCS. So typically, partnership agreements take the form of loan commitments, memorandums of understanding, or letters of commitment. And to make these agreements effective, it should include a description of roles and the relationship between the applicant and the project partner, how they're going to collaborate with one another, and a clear articulation of the contribution that the cooperating agency will make to the project. The agreement should also be signed by all parties involved. Specific details on what should be included in these partnership agreements and the specific types of agreements that are commonly used in CED projects. This is something you can ask your OCS program specialist or OGM grants management specialist about, and we'll also be providing more guidance on this in the future. So as we mentioned earlier, all funds must be treated in accordance with applicable federal rules and regulations. So first is the HHS grant policy statement, which includes the general terms and conditions of all HHS grant and cooperative agreement awards. So this covers a range of topics, and you can access it at the URL on this slide to kind of go over what that entails. And we want to recommend that you review this document very carefully and kind of talk to your program specialist and your grants management specialist about any questions that you have with these requirements. Second is the uniform administrative requirements, and this sets forth both HHS agencies and grant recipients' requirements that they're expected to fulfill. And you'll want to note the required sections pertaining to financial management systems. An important issue to be aware of that is addressed in the requirements is that your grant funds must be kept separate and identifiable, even if the grant funding is only a portion of the total budget. So your uniform administrative requirements specify that you are to adopt a system that allows you to give a specific breakdown of how grant funds were used. So for instance, you are required to adopt a financial system that records the source and use of funds for project activities, as well as information pertaining to federal awards, assets, and income and interest. And you'll note that this is exactly the type of information that you have to report on in your financial status reports. You'll want to make sure that you note that 2015 grantees are subject to 45 CFR Part 75, while grants awarded prior to 2015 are subject to 45 CFR Part 74. So be aware about which requirements apply to your grants, especially if your organization has received grants in both in 2014 and earlier and in 2015. So if you're confused about which requirements you need to adhere to, contact your program specialist and your grants management specialist. So the third requirement are the cost principles. Cost principles establish general standards for the allowability of costs and the determination of allowable principles for selected items of cost. So your cost principles are set forth in several regulations and OMB circulars. Most nonprofits fall under 2 CFR Part 230. However, which particular set of cost principles apply depends on your organization. So if you're not sure which do apply, you'll want to contact your program specialist and grants management specialist. So we know that that is a lot of information, but there are many resources available to help you in implementing your CED grants So like we talked about, your OCS program specialist is kind of your day-to-day person that you'll want to contact when you have questions pertaining to the program side of your grants. And you can also email questions or request some technical assistance from one of your OCS program specialists by emailing them directly, or you can email us at ocsregistrar@icfi.com. OCS also sponsors many other events throughout the year, including trainings, presentations, and webinars on different grant topics. So you'll want to look out for information about when these are going to be held and different topics. We usually send those out through the OCS registrar, and we post them on the website. And the websites on your screen are helpful to you for administering your grants, and it's where we post notifications when we're going to be hosting a webinar or resources are available. Particularly noteworthy is the CED website, which includes specific information on the CED program and its grantees. Also information about upcoming conference calls and different resources that can help you implement your projects. As we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, PMS is responsible for dispersing grant funds, and the PMS page includes instructions for accessing your funds and as well as information that you'll need to submit in order to make your first draw request. And you'll also request your funds through this page. This slide contains some websites that provide some key information on federal grant management requirements and activity. So you'll want to refer to these links as you are implementing your projects. So next we're going to open up for questions that you can submit through the phone. But before we open it up, we wanted to mention that we do have several more sessions scheduled in the coming weeks for CED grantees. So you'll want to mark your calendars. If you registered for this webinar, it means that you've registered for all of the webinars in the series. So the next webinar on November 19th is going to cover data collection reporting. We'll also have a webinar on using grant solutions, covering OGM policies and procedures, and before you submit your first PPR, which won't be till the spring of 2016, we'll offer another webinar on using the online system. So look out for those webinars that will provide a lot of guidance to you. So now we will open it up for questions. There are two ways that you can submit questions. One is through, you can submit a written question through live meeting, or you can submit a question by pressing *1 on your phone, and the operator will assist you and you can ask your question, and we will do our best to answer any questions that you submit. If there's a question that we don't get to you or we need to do a little bit more research in order to provide you with a response, we will just take down your information and we will send out a response after the call. And again, you will be able to access the recording of this webinar on the CED website. And once those materials and the recording are available, we'll send you an email to the OCS registrar with some information on how to access them. So feel free to submit your questions. Operator, do you have any questions on the line at this time?
We do not have any questions over the phone.
Okay, so we will just give folks a few more minutes to submit questions if they would like. And also keep in mind that the webinars that we'll be having over the next few months that you see on your screen now will address certain topics. So feel free to submit your questions about these topics now, but we'll also get into more detail about them during these presentations.
And we do have a question over the phone.
Sure.
Mr. Bolin, your line is open. Caller, your line is open if you'd like to ask a question.
All right, while we're waiting for the grantee on the line to ask our question, we did receive a few questions through live meeting. So the first question is, we understand that job creation is required. However, does this also cover job retention? So the answer is yes. So there, in the PPR, which is the Performance Progress Report that you will report on twice a year, you'll report on the business and job creation progress of your grants, and there is a question regarding how many jobs you've created and how long these jobs have been in operation. So it is expected that the jobs you're creating are lasting for a while in the communities, and you'll be able to report on that twice a year in the PPR. And the next question we received through the live meeting is about accessing this slideshow after today. And the answer is yes. This webinar recording, a PDF of the slides, and a transcript will be available. Usually it takes about a week, and we'll send you an email through the OCS registrar when these materials are available and how you can access them. We also received a question that is, at what point can we begin to incur eligible expenses? And once you are eligible to draw down your funds, once you kind of are awarded your grant, and as long as there are no restrictions on your funds, like we discussed in your award package, you can start working with PMS to start drawing down your funds. If you have specific questions regarding how to do this, you should contact your OCS program specialist and your OGM grants management specialist. Operator, are there any more questions on the line?
There are no questions over the phone at this time.
Okay, so since there's no more questions, we can wrap up today's presentation. We want to thank you for joining us. And if you think of any questions after the presentation, definitely contact us at the email address you see on your screen here, the OCS registrar at icfi.com, or you can contact your program specialist or grants management specialist if you have any questions on anything we covered today. So thank you for joining us. We hope that you will join us for the other webinars in our series.
This does conclude today's presentation. We thank you all for your participation.